Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Everything Voiceovers podcast. Hope you're doing fine. This is Tcode, your host, and this is a bonus episode of the podcast. Yes, it's a bonus episode because we're done with season 3 officially, and we're now having some space to, just look back at some of the great episodes we've had in the past few years of doing the podcast since 2022. And these bonus episodes, they are curated specially to highlight some episodes that I think will be very relevant to you, looking at the questions that I get asked often about voiceovers. And I also looked at some of the episodes that had a lot of listens over the years, and I thought, well, let's get some precise conversations or topics or monologues from the episodes and share them with you. So yeah, it's not going to be a long one. Today's episode is about 12 minutes, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. So in today's episode, we're talking about the must knows before you start your voiceover journey. So this was recorded sometime in 2022, and I was talking about the 6 things that I think voiceover artists should know before starting their voiceover journey. At the time, I saw that a lot of people were entering into the industry with the wrong motives. And sometimes not even the wrong motives, but the wrong expectations, or probably too high expectations or too low expectations. They just didn't know how to prepare before they got into the industry. So I decided to make an episode from this, and spoke about it. So in this episode, I expect to listen to talks about a few things about my journey, right? And I touched on things like rates. I touched on things like equipment, knowing that you should have equipment before you start. And I touched on things like community and time. So I'll just let you enjoy the episode. And let's get right into it. Before starting your voiceover career, so I'm going to make this as brief as possible. Before you get into voiceovers in Nigeria, first of all, know that voiceover is not a get-rich-quick scheme. It's not one of those industries that you get into hoping to get rich all of a sudden. No, it doesn't work like that. Because even those who are full-time voice actors or even part-time voice actors are still trying to find a way to make money off it. Our industry here in Nigeria is still in the formative stages. Yes, it looks like we have the hype. It looks like things are happening. There are conferences here and there. There are institutions of learning. But to be honest, it's not as rosy as it looks. A lot of people are still struggling to make good money from voiceovers in Nigeria. So if you're coming into voiceovers, this is not to discourage you, but for you to know that you got to be ready to put in the efforts, to put in the work. It doesn't come easy. And to be very fair and honest, it's the same thing, I think, for most industries. You don't just start something and all of a sudden you expect to start making money off that career or that train of investment in the soonest time possible. You need to invest. You need to put in time, effort, money into whatever it is that you're doing, and you'll start seeing some rewards for that. So voiceovers is not a quick get-rich-quick scheme. Also, to complement this point that I just made, is for you to understand that getting into voiceovers, you should have an idea of what the voiceover business entails, so that you understand that you need to put in this and this and this and this into it, network with certain folks in the industry, or kind of have an idea of how they operate their business. If you need to, enroll for training or something, these are things that you need to do to make sure that you have a solid voiceover career. Another thing that I would like you to pay attention to is that to practice as a voiceover artist in Nigeria, you either need to own a home studio or you work with a professional studio. For me, these are the 2 most recommended advice I can give you, or things that I think you should know before you get into voiceovers. Don't just jump into voiceovers, recording with your phone and thinking that that's how it works. It doesn't work that way. So you need to look for a recording studio close to you that you can trust to help you edit, produce, record your voice, and you get the finished work to the client. But if you're going to be working on your own, like I am doing, I own a home studio, you need to be able to set up your own home studio. Now, there's a lot to setting up home studios. The important things you need to understand about building a home studio is that before you even start at all, do a ton of research about the kind of devices you need to use and the acoustics of the place, the location, the spot in your house that you'll be using for a home studio. Because no matter how good the microphone that you buy is, if you do not have a well sound treated room or studio, you will have a poor production or poor output. So do your research. You'll be needing your microphone, you'll be needing a computer, either a laptop or a PC, or a desktop computer. You'll be needing your monitors, you'll be needing your headphones, you'll be needing an audio interface or sound card. And if you're using an XLR microphone, you also have to understand the difference between a condenser and a dynamic microphone. I would always recommend a condenser microphone for voice talent. And all of these things, you need to do your research. So another thing you need to know if you're going to be getting into voiceovers in Nigeria is that you need to have some knowledge about the voiceover industry, right? You don't just get into an industry without understanding what obtains in the industry. I know some people would like to go the international route by taking or by registering, signing up with pay-to-play sites, the Fivers, the Voices.com, the Voices 123. But if you really want to practice in Nigeria, you need to understand the dynamics of how it works. Let me give you an instance. Some years back, I was working in another state in the Southwest, and the average amount that voice talents charge in that region is 10,000 naira. At the time, that was what I thought was the appropriate amount or the average amount that voice actors in Nigeria were charging, until I further went to learn more about the industry, and I realized that it's somewhere around 50,000 naira for a radio commercial of less than 60 seconds or 60 seconds. And then, I began to upgrade my mind, also understood better how to deal with clients. This is just one of the many things you need to understand about the industry. How do the rates work? How to deal with customers? And my tip for you to get to understand the Nigerian voiceover industry is for you to find a community to belong to, a voiceover community to belong to, right? Or you rather network with people in the voiceover business. I would recommend a couple of places or a couple of events or communities that you can be a part of. You can start off with training, right? And there are places that you can train, which leads me to my fourth point. But before I even get into my fourth point, I'm just going to mention spots or key players in the industry that you can associate with. So we have the Voiceover Academy, we have the Voiceover Workshop, we have Kickstart interviews, we have the Voiceover Bootcamp. I think there are a couple of others that I have not mentioned, but not so much. The thing about all these institutions that I've mentioned is that they are voiceover learning institutions in Nigeria. So whichever one you want to pick, you get to learn voiceovers from those institutions. The good thing about them is that after you're done, they add you to some sort of community, either on WhatsApp, on Instagram, on Telegram, or I don't know, maybe on Twitter, on Clubhouse. You get to learn from them, and then you're added to the community so you can network with fellow voice actors like you. If you're going to be enrolling for training or coaching, you need to invest in that regard. But some people are able to also learn via the internet, because there are lots of things you can learn on the internet. Like, for instance, this podcast helps you to understand the industry. So it's a good place to learn consistently every week, via the episodes that we treat different voiceover related topics on this podcast. And there are a few other podcasts about voiceovers that you can learn from, right? You can also learn from following certain voice actors in the industry, look at what they're doing, check their pages, right? Follow them. And you can also learn from the communities that I mentioned, from the conferences. Those are ways to really learn without really spending money. But really, you need to be able to invest. You should actually spend money, right, on training and find good mentors to train you, find good academies to teach you on voiceovers. So you're going to be investing in learning. You're also going to be investing in voiceover gears, the microphones. For some people, they think microphones are supposed to be cheap. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but they are not cheap. In Nigeria, you're not going to be
I mean, if you're going to be getting a good microphone, be ready to invest in gears. You're not just going to be buying a microphone. Like I said earlier, you're going to be buying a microphone, a headphone. You're going to be buying audio interface. You have to have a computer, your recording space. All of these are going to take you or cost you money. The last thing I would like to add to this, or the sixth thing I'd like you to know before starting your voiceover business in Nigeria or career, is that all of these things that I've mentioned, even when you apply them to voiceover business, it takes time before you start to see the impact or the effect. If you train, if you invest with your money, if you belong to communities, all of those things, you can do them, but the reward doesn't come immediately. You need to give yourself time to grow. You need to give yourself time to evolve. There are certain things about your voice that you're not going to discover even in the first 1 year of being a voice actor. Even in the first 2 years, if you want to practice voiceovers in Nigeria, have a production studio or your own home studio. You should also have a good knowledge about the industry. Also enroll for classes, but be assured that it doesn't guarantee success. You should also be ready to invest, and finally, understand that success in voiceovers takes time. I hope I've been able to say some meaningful things to you in this episode. Thank you for listening to me.
Wow, that was some advice. Just listening to all of that, it's quite refreshing that many of the things said, they still stand true to date. The only thing that probably has changed is the amounts that I mentioned about the rates for voiceover. The rate has, if not tripled since that time. So you want to know or have that at the back of your mind. But yes, valid advice if you want to get into the voiceover industry. And thank you for listening to this episode. Do well to like, comment, share, and follow or subscribe on whatever platform you're listening or watching to this from. It's Tcode, and thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye. On to the next.